Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today to discuss a very interesting topic on understanding round-the-clock renewable energy tenders in India. The event is organized by GMK Research, a market research and consulting firm focusing on renewables in e-mobility segment. The session is supported by Institute of Energy Economics and Financial Analysis, IFA, a leading think tank that analyzes issues related to energy markets, trends, and policies. IFA and GMK Research have released a briefing note as well on this topic today, sharing the link on chat as well for all of you to access the report. Quickly on the format of the webinar. The webinar will consist of interactive discussion with our eminent speakers, followed by question and answer session. At the end, we will have 15 minutes for Q&A round, where questions will be taken from the live attendees. Participants are welcome to submit their questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of the webinar window. Some of the key discussion points for today's sessions will be understanding RTC tenders in India. What is the optimal mix of RE sources for RTC tenders? Tariff analysis, role of new technologies, key challenges and risks, developer perspective on RTC tenders, and way forward. And now to take on the discussion today, we have a very diverse mix of industry experts. A quick intro for experts here today. We have Ms. Vibhuti Garg, Energy Economist from IFA. We have Mr. Prateek Prasoon, Manager from SECI. Mr. Lakshmi Narayanan, DGM from Ayana Renewables. We have Ms. Surbhi Singhvi, Manager from World Business Council of Sustainability Development. And lastly, we have Mr. Srinidhi Sharma, Manager from NTPC. Thank you all to be part of this discussion today. Without taking much time now, we would like to start with Vibhuti, you first, to share some findings of a report that we published today. Over to you, Vibhuti.
Thank you. Let me just put my slides on. Can you see my slides?
Yes, Vibhuti.
Perfect. A very good afternoon, everyone. We today will discuss about the RTC contracts in India. As you all know, India has set huge ambitions to kind of decarbonize its electricity as well as other sectors. At COP26 in Glasgow, Prime Minister Modi enhanced our renewable energy targets and has announced that India will achieve about 500 gigawatts of installed power capacity from non-fossil fuel sources by 2030, as well as meet 50% of its energy requirement from renewable energy sources as well. In the last 1 decade, we have seen tremendous progress. So the rate of installation has gone up, and the share of renewable energy in the overall generation mix has also gone up. And currently it is about 10 to 12% of the overall energy generation that is coming from renewable energy sources. However, the issue with renewable energy is because of its variable nature. So it becomes increasingly necessary to look at ways to kind of integrate renewable energy better. And in order to enable RE grid integration, one of the ways SECI came out was that instead of just coming up with the plain vanilla contracts, they started coming up with hybrid contracts to begin with. And now it is around the clock tenders that are increasingly the flavor of the kind of tenders that would be coming up in the next few years. RTC tenders, I would say, are still at the exploratory stage where different combinations by different developers are being tested out as to how they can meet the requirements that are being set out as part of the RTC tenders. So today I'm going to present the different RTC tenders issued by SECI, what their salient features are, what was the winning tariff, and who the players who won those bids, look at what could be the potential project deployment methodologies for these RTC tenders. And then finally talk about some challenges and way forward. Quickly, comparison between the different tenders and their salient features. So at first, SECI issued a tender of setting up 1,200 megawatt of renewable energy plus storage projects with an assured peak power supply. So projects under this tender were eligible for peak as well as off-peak tariffs. The winner of this bid was Greenko as well as Renew Power. They had a flat tariff, off-peak tariff of rupees 2.88 per kilowatt hour, and then peak tariff of rupees 6.12 per kilowatt hour by Greenko and 6.85 rupees per kilowatt hour by Renew Power. Here, the capacities are co-located with 35% annual capacity utilization factor and 6 hours of peak supply. But such a low CUF doesn't really help DISCOMs. So then SECI came out with RTC tenders that can help meet DISCOMs' energy requirements on a more continuous basis and also help in better grid balancing as well. So in October 2019, SECI issued the first ever RE RTC tender of 400 megawatts. I would say that the ministry is still learning to crack this RTC bid. The original tender issued in October 2019 was kind of amended 5 times between January and March 2020. Following this, to pave the way for deployment of RE, complemented with power from any conventional source or storage. So the earlier one was primarily just RE, renewable energy sources, but this SECI RTC tender allowed the flexibility to combine it with any conventional source as well, along with storage. SECI initially announced the tender for 5,000 megawatts, but then it later reduced the capacity to 2,500 megawatt in December 2020. And again, in the space of 1 year from the original release in March 2020, the RTC tender was again amended almost 7 times till the final features were kind of frozen. And we'll just talk about a little bit more about those features in just a few minutes from now. Now, if you will see, the tariff design has evolved from kind of fixed to scalable, and then further, the RTC2 tender allows partly it is fixed, but partly it is scalable. Location is co-located for this 1,200 megawatt SECI peak power bid, but for RTC tenders, the government has done away with the requirement, and now there is no constraint. The government also did impose certain penalties for shortfall in energy supplies as well. So there was an increase in 300 to 400% tariff if the developer fails to meet the generation requirement or the annual CUF as set out in the RTC tender. The capacity utilization factor is again was very low for this peak power supply, which now for RTC tenders are in the range of 80 to 85%, and with a monthly CUF for the RTC1 tender for even still 70%. The peak hour duration again kind of varies. For RTC1 tender, it's not defined, but for RTC2 tenders, it is 4 hours. Now for RTC1, these are the players with the bid capacity and the capacity 1. So in May 2020, the SECI 400 megawatt RTC tender auction set the L1 tariff of rupees 2.9 per kilowatt hour, which had 3% annual escalation for the first 15 years. So the levelized tariff for this project comes out to be rupees 3.6 per kilowatt hour, and the bid was won by Renew Power. Now, if we look at RTC2 tender results after about 18 months from the original RFS issuance, the RTC2 auction in October 2021 attracted bids equivalent to almost 4.7 times the tender capacity, which was 2.5 gigawatts. So there was overcapacity that was bid out for RTC2. And if you will look at the players, From the greatest participation was from conventional or renewable power companies like Greenko, Renew Power, Hindustan Thermal Power Projects, which were pure play generating companies, and they had and they were quite big players. But in addition, the next largest representation was from core construction companies as well as the infrastructure companies like Shirdi Sai Electricals as well as Navyog Engineering, etc. For this bid, the lowest tariff was rupees 3.01 per kilowatt hour, which was quoted by Hindustan Thermal Projects for a bid capacity of 250 megawatts. While the auction has been concluded, the allotment capacities are still remaining, and for the other winners is yet to be finalized, as SECI has asked the other winner prices to be matched with the L1 tariff. So it is yet to be seen whether the other players would be able to match their bids to the lowest tariff of 3.01 per kilowatt hour or not. Now, players have not revealed their strategy to meet the capacity utilization factor or other conditions as set out in the tender. So we, the JMK Research and ARPA, tried to formulate some combinations that are possible within these bids. And we did run a financial model to derive at the tariff one, and also, given that what the tariff was, as well as what capacity utilization factor had to be achieved. I'm just going to quickly kind of present some of the results, but for more details, you can look at our report, which was released today, and Jyoti has also shared the link to the report in the chat box. Now, coming back to these possible project deployment methodologies that would have been adopted by these players. So when we say RTC, it would necessarily then involve kind of hybrid of wind and solar power. But in order to obtain such high capacity utilization factors, it becomes necessary to complement combined wind and solar power with some firm and predictable power. So for RTC1, the firm predictable power is energy storage. So using solar and wind in the ratio of 30-70, there was an additional 100 megawatt hour of battery storage that is being considered. The bid conditions further allow for the resizing of the energy storage up to 3 years, from the commissioning date. So till 2025, they can resize their storage capacity, but for now, we assume that the capacity would be of 100 megawatt hour. Now, the CUF is set high, and higher CUF levels call for heavy oversizing of the RE component of overall project capacity. So for a purely RE-driven project or RE plus storage project, the overcapacity is expected to be 3 or more times that of contracted RTC capacity. So here you can see, for RTC1, the oversizing of RE capacities to the extent of 225%. Now for RTC2, the first option that the players can combine using different technologies, it is anticipated that the winning companies with expertise in the renewable energy market like Renew Power and Greenko might combine solar, wind, and hydropower, such as run-of-the-river type. It is further anticipated that 70 to 80% of the annual energy generation demand will be met through solar and wind capacities, and the rest with hydro. So both Greenko and Renew have hydro assets. Renew, in fact, recently acquired one of 99 megawatt of hydro assets from L&T as well. So this will again lead to oversizing to attain the higher CUF, but in this case, no energy storage component is considered. Given that RTC had allowed, 51% RE power and 49% from non-conventional, so the second option is combining renewable along with thermal power. So conventional power producers such as Hindustan Thermal Projects and the likes of JSW, they would ideally use their idle thermal capacities, and combine it with renewable energy to provide such high capacity utilization factors. They have huge amount of untied capacities available to them, and they can use that without any additional capital expenditure required to build any new thermal project. But for RE plus thermal project, oversizing requirements will be very, very low, given you are thermal has very high CUF in itself, so you don't have to really oversize your capacity in order to achieve such CUF. So here, another advantage is for this project, the surplus generation will be low. But for RE resources leading to oversizing, there will be occasions where there will be surplus generation. And that surplus generation can be sold, in the open market through power exchange, or some short-term bilateral contracts as well. And in case of deficit, as I mentioned earlier, also the developer has to pay penalties. So it's quite favorable to have, even if they have built oversized capacity, they'll be able to have avenues for sale of that excess capacity or excess generation in the open market. Now, when we look at these models and based on the financial modeling for the three scenarios, it comes out of the possible technology amalgamations, the RE plus thermal is best suited under the current scenario. But going forward with expectation that the battery storage prices will go down, RE plus battery storage would be the most viable solution. When I talked about these different mix and these different tender conditions that were laid out, so there were some challenges with these bids. First is given the minimum annual energy availability is set less than 100%, so technically these cannot be called as RTC. Also, we have multiple locations that are required that may not be even kind of hybrid, and brings to the second challenge of multiple injection points, which could lead to higher land and transmission costs. And further, it kind of increases the risk of electricity grid imbalance. Thirdly, the DISCOMs have to take power when it is generated and not the other way around. So it won't solve the issue of DISCOM that this power is necessarily available during times when they need it. Lastly, this is my final slide. Now, in order to help better penetration of RTC tenders has a lot of advantages, but needs some kind of course correction and some support from the government. So far, these tenders are issued to meet DISCOM requirement as a way forward. It needs enhanced support from the government through viability gap funding and also through some demonstration of pilot projects. The high cost of batteries still makes storage expensive and unviable as of now, but only small capacities of battery storage can be expected if included in the technology mix. So in the initial phase, the government could lend an additional support to RTC projects by way of viability gap funding to kind of, protect them against such potential tariff spikes. Further, it is crucial that, institutions like SECI, MNRE help in building these pilot projects of hybrid plus storage. And these pilot projects will give more confidence, and then we can scale it up with much greater confidence from learnings from these pilots. Secondly, market reforms through supply blocks on peak tariff or virtual power plant. Taking a cue from how other countries approach demand-based power supply, it is imperative that India implements time-based models to give incentives for renewable energy supply to kind of match demand, like in Chile. The scheme kind of allowed power producers to participate in technology agnostic auctions to supply power during specific time blocks. And this worked in the benefit of RE developers, as they were now competing against conventional thermal power players for time blocks during which there is sufficient RE resource availability. In US, renewable integrated storage power producers get incentives to supply during peak hours, in summer from 4 to 9 p.m. And these peak tariffs are as high as about 6 times higher than the off-peak hours. So that is one of the big incentives of operating these hybrid plus storage kind of models by such price signals that they receive for on-peak tariffs. To further enhance grid balancing, aggregation of multiple capacities of various generation and storage technologies through virtual power plants can be explored the way it has been done in Germany. And lastly, technical engineering can play a significant role to increase the capacity utilization factor. So by deploying high wattage bifacial modules, with single axis tracker along with robotic cleaning can lead to additional increase in energy generation. So these are kind of some of the ways that we have highlighted in our report. I will stop here and would pass it to Jyoti now and have experts talk more about it. So thank you.
Thank you, Vibhuti, for summarizing so well all the insights that we have talked in our report. But let's hear it from our other experts today. And we have our next guest from Solar Energy Corporation of India, Mr. Prateek Prasoon. Prateek, undoubtedly, SECI role has been instrumental in driving India's renewable energy transition. And we will be really glad if you can share what are SECI's plans, ongoing plans with the RTC2 auction, and what are the future expectations in terms of new tenders that are expected from SECI. Over to you, Prateek.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, all the panelists. I first of all, I would like to thank JMK for inviting me to this session. Going ahead, basically, when we talk about RTC, just minor, I don't know, my insight, when I saw the report, the summary, I think calling the definition of RTC as 100% would be a sort of extreme, because even in terms of thermal projects, what we see is 85%, and they are bound to supply round the clock power because you're supposed to provide some shutdown period. So that is what we borrowed from the thermal segment. And that is how we define RTC in the RE segment also. So that is one thing. Secondly, the original intent is to provide a flatline curve to the DISCOM so that the inherent intermittency, which is the sort of a bane for this sector, is resolved. We have been trying to address that issue through the innovative tenders, starting from the hybrid, as rightly pointed out by Vibhuti. Coming back to this tender, RTC2, see, we had actually had a very, thorough analysis of all the aspects of this tender, and that's why it took almost 1.5 years to finalize the document. To finalize, conclude the bid. And we were quite excited with the response. We got almost more than 12 gigawatt of capacity against the tendered capacity of 2,500. And in terms of, purely in terms of numbers, it is the biggest response, not in terms of multiples, of course. So that is a huge achievement. And that, when we saw the list of bidders, and I am not at the liberty to divulge the mix which they proposed, but it was a personally, it was satisfaction for me, because we received a greater number of bidders who had proposed 100% RTC through RE. Even though we allowed developers to mix 51:49 ratio. It's another thing that somehow the tariffs did not, even though they are lowest of whatever we can call them, but they are not meeting the expectations of everyone. So that played kind of a spoiled sport. Otherwise, we would have been very happy with the 3.18 at the time of auction it was happening. Right now, the L1 matching is, again, it's basically derived from the guidelines. So as you might be aware, all these documents are based on the guidelines issued by the government, and we have a role to play in those drafting, but obviously all the points are not drafted by us. Somehow this L1 matching was introduced by the government, so we had to stick with it. And we have provided a sequential manner of L1 matching. So we keep on offering the L1 tariff to the bidders without changing any conditions, of course. And right now we are, so we have around 15 bidders we had, and L1 is the first. So we are going through the remaining 14 bidders. We have till date reached around 9th or 10th bidder. So the last 3-4 bidders are left. So we'll be wrapping up the entire process by, let's say, 2 to 3 weeks. Assuming they reply early, because we are assuming everybody will be rejecting the L1 tariff. Once, assume again the worst case, once we receive that rejection, unanimous rejection, the matter will be, as is the case with other tenders, it will be put up to the board for approval. The board may choose to offer only the 10% capacity, or we may, reconsider whatever happens. That's for the board to decide. But yeah, one message is clear that this L1 matching probably doesn't work. So that is one part. Then going ahead, we are still very much confident about this concept of RTC. And for SECI personally, it's basically the circle has come around because the sector started with, on piggybacking on the thermal sector, and now thermal projects are basically, they want RE to de-stress them. So that is a good thing to know. But again, RTC pure RTC, what we call them, that cannot be possible without the balancing of provided by the thermal components. So the third tranche of this RTC series is supposed to be issued with the complementing hydro projects. That is what we are planning. The government has, there are several committees formed by the Ministry of Power, and they are coming up with some reports and all. So basically, the standard hydro capacity is, we are looking to tie up such capacities with the upcoming RE projects. And more or less the modalities will remain the same. 85% availability is a standard requirement of DISCOMs. We have not received any, any customized requirement as such. They are happy with the current composition, and the peak hour requirement is, of course, that is quite stringent because it's not been defined in the tender, but it is defined basically by the RLDC. And if a project is mapped to multiple RLDCs, it adds to the strain of the, it adds to the, designing aspects. Just give me 1 second. Hi, meeting moment. I'm so sorry. So, where was I? Yeah, the next tranche. So, this thing, 85% availability during peak hours is something which which we are relooking, because we had tried with the in the first peak hour tender, we had tried to define the peak hours so that uncertainty is addressed when you design the system from the bidder's point of view. But the problem is these defined provisions will work only when you have a buyer pre-identified when you start the bid. But majority of the DISCOMs currently, they wait for the tariffs, so it's kind of a chicken and egg story. So we generally go for a sort of an in principle agreement, or not even written, but just a confirmation that yeah, they are okay with these kind of tenders. But without identifying a buyer, we are not. It's not possible to identify the peak hours, and that is why we had to leave it to the RLDC to define the peak hours. So that is one design aspect which has been strongly opposed by the developers. The next part is the LD liquidated basically the penalty which they have to pay on account of shortfall in meeting these criteria. So that is currently the 4 times of the PPA tariff. That again, we had, the government had basically provided this kind of stringent penalty just to check what we call gaming in this entire project system. The point is that we are yet to see these kind of projects take, being implemented as of now. So just to be on the safer side, maybe it obviously looks on a stringent side, but that is something which probably will not change more from what I feel. So SECI in general is now determined to, basically make the RE capacity as a RE in general as a, center figure for entire Indian energy planning. Wherever you actually, when you talk about system and enhancement, augmentation, everywhere RE capacity is basically one of the key aspects now, and we are proud to play a major role in bringing RE to that front. Obviously, it would not have been possible without the developers. So, of course, it's a joint effort. And so that's it from the RTC front. If I hope it's okay.
Thanks, Prateek. Yes, and I agree that SECI has spearheaded the overall, renewable energy transition in India. Before I went on to our next speaker, I just want one more, overview kind of scenario from you, Prateek, if you can talk about, which is the role of new energy storage tenders that SECI is also issuing now.
Right.
Any remarks on that, Prateek?
So storage again, without the storage, obviously you cannot achieve a firm output. I mean, you cannot firm up the total profile. So the government is quite keen on rapid, implementation of storage capacity. 4 gigawatt hour capacity installation target has been announced by the Honorable Minister. And out of that 4 gigawatt hour, 1 gigawatt hour capacity is probably the tender will be issued next month. We have had 2 rounds of stakeholder consultations. They have been quite well received, and they were chaired. The last one happened yesterday, and it was chaired by Honorable Minister himself. So that gives a lot of boost to our efforts, and it also emphasizes the seriousness which the government is imparting on this sector. To talk about that tender, the final document will be issued after issuance of the guidelines. The draft guidelines and the draft tender documents are there in the public domain. It will basically be a new experiment of sorts, which we are trying here. We are not looking at energy supply. We are basically looking at capacity supply. So you have, as a developer, you have to supply a storage capacity which will be available. Again, 85% is, sorry, in this case, it is 95% availability on an annual basis. And the charging and discharging is responsibility of the off-taker. That off-taker will be through SECI. And so the developer, and in this case, his scope is not including any tie up with any power supply in general. They are not supposed to set up any RE project. That is one part, and the other part, what we are trying here is to test the market also. So we are not committing to offtake the entire 100% capacity. 30% will be left to the market. So we will be ensuring that the developer commissions the entire capacity. They cannot set up only 70 and run away. That is one part. And we'll be seeing if that 30% capacity is sellable to the market, and if the market is mature enough. From what the feedbacks we are receiving till date, the market is quite enthusiastic about this 30% capacity which will be coming. So most of these companies, the prospective bidders which we are talking to, they have already started tying up with several different models are there, and it's heartening to know that there are different business models being considered, and because of this tender. So that is one part. And remaining other provisions remain more or less unchanged. I mean, they're same as other tenders. 85% availability is one thing, then 95%. 85% is the efficiency which we're asking from the technical front. Then there are some LDs and all. The government has provided they will provide a lot of policy enablers in this case. With respect to land availability and all, the developers will not have to worry about that. The entire project will be set up in a area in the vicinity of the Fatehgarh 3 substation. So that is one sort of a ease of doing business point. Then they don't have to worry about LTA connectivity and all, because that has been assured by the government. ISTS waiver is a very big development. The government is coming at, I mean, they're bringing some modifications. I don't know whether they're announced or not. So on an annual basis, if the charging and discharging is done by 51% RE, then the entire 100% charging and discharging is waived off by, I mean, ISTS charges are waived off on that. So that will be a really huge boost, because even in this tender, there will be some conventional power charging and discharging. So you cannot escape from that. So that is one thing. It's exciting for us to look for certain new markets, maybe because of the short-term nature of the PPA, it will be around 12 years. So we may explore other markets apart from the standard discoms which we are looking. So that is something which even is untested for us. A part of this capacity will be, we are trying to earmark it for grid ancillary services. So we are talking to POSOCO for that. So the point is that storage in general is, it provides a wide array of services, and we are trying to tap on those possibilities, and the learnings from this tender will obviously be a huge help for shaping the entire storage segment in India. Again, storage in India, when we talk about it, it's not only limited to battery. This is one technology which we are testing right now, but the government has in no way made it. I mean, the government has actually made it very clear that there will be a comprehensive storage policy being put across, and we'll be testing other storage technologies also. So that's it.
Thank you, Prateek, for sharing your remarks. I think for overall sector itself, it's exciting, and we look forward to many more innovations from SECI, which will drive the sector. Let's hear it from two of the project developers that we have as panelists today. My next guest today is Mr. Srinidhi Sharma from NTPC. So Srinidhi, as a leading public sector undertaking, NTPC is also betting big on renewable energy projects. So what are the new opportunities and challenges that you foresee with these RTC tenders?
Yeah, good afternoon, Jyoti, and good afternoon, everyone. So I believe that RTC tenders, they are evolving a little bit, and the conditions are kind of changing with each and every RTC, as was mentioned by Mr. Prateek as well. And it might take some time for stabilization, and we might have different variations of RTC. That RTC itself would be a basket wherein we'll have different variations with RTC with thermal, maybe with hydro, maybe down the line we would be using hydrogen as well in the RTC tenders. So, and there were many inputs from the industry, which shows that there is sufficient excitement in the market about such tenders. But we have to look at it from a complete stakeholders perspective, that there are discoms who want a power which is an assured power, and RE is not really able to meet that. So these kind of tenders will help them. And also the RE sector players like us, like NTPC and other players who are into this RE power development. And it might benefit us a little bit because we are also into thermal power. That's our main bread and butter. But if we have to look at from an India as a whole, we have to go into energy transition, and deployment of RE would be much faster if we look at this RTC tenders. And as always, there are a few challenges, and especially in these kind of hybrid or RTC tenders, most of the challenges are similar to a normal RE, a solar or a wind plant. Most of them are related to, let's say, land acquisition or the ISTS connectivity. However, these challenges would be multiplied. They will become multifold because there will be additional issues, as the plants might not be co-located, as the tender conditions allow us, they give us the freedom that solar plant can be at a different location and thermal plant can be at a different location. And one has to integrate these multiple sources of power generation. Now, what one can do is that the thermal plus RE and other storage techniques we'll have to explore that. What will happen is that the wind and solar co-location would be possible only at a few locations, wherein the wind resource is high, and we'll have to do the micro siting for wind turbines. And so for us, places like Khavda or Bhuj, we are exploring that we put in our solar wind, and also we are exploring that we can put in some battery, because that is an ideal location for NTPC, wherein we can experiment and see and have the learnings from that experiment, how that integration of three different power sources will take place. But these kind of locations, they are not aplenty. So there are a few pockets where wind and solar can be co-located, and also we can incorporate battery storage. And depending on the location, uh, one can also explore pumped storage for energy storage if the requirement is for more than 5 hours or 6 hours. That is where I believe the pumped storage makes more sense compared to a lithium ion battery, which makes sense in around a 4 hour storage kind of a thing, 4 hours or 2 hours kind of a storage thing. But PSP or a pump storage also is a very geographically dependent thing. A run of a river hydro can be a peaker power plant kind of a thing, which we don't really have a lot of them in India. West, we have this concept of peaker plants, but in India, unfortunately, there are not many peaker plants which can come in quickly and come go down quickly when the peak power requirement is there in the grid, especially in the initial 2 or 3 in the morning, 2 or 3 hours, the morning peak, and in the evening peak. But PSP can be explored aggressively, and we are also looking into that. I believe Greenco or Renew, they have they are exploring this pump storage for providing the storage part of it in the RE plus storage RTC tenders. But depending on the requirement, depending on the techno-economical feasibility, one has to decide the configuration as to what is the tariff which we are getting from a pump storage and what is the tariff of a solar or a wind plant. So one has to optimize the output from these multiple sources. It's like an engaging puzzle. One has to solve this. We have to do the permutation combination again so that we don't have the LDs, we don't incur the LDs, and we are still able to meet the 85% requirement and the 51% of RE requirement. Now, one important part is that if we consider a thermal power plant, there's a technical minimum below which the thermal power plant will not make sense. It does not make sense for a coal plant to turn on and shut down quickly within a span of few hours. So we need to have a plant load factor or a PLF of around, let's say, 50-55 percentage. And in order for that to make sense, that plant should be near a pit head location where the ECR or the energy charge rates are very attractive or very low. So it's not that every thermal plant will make sense to bundle it with RE. So that is that aspect of it. So what I believe is that we need to have a balanced approach, and what will come as what you call to our rescue would be the advanced technologies which we can use. As was mentioned previously as well, we are exploring to use bifacial modules with single axis trackers in, let's say, Bhuj or Khavda. So we get a relatively flatter peak, because from 8 or 9 in the morning till around 2 or 3 in the afternoon, it might behave almost like an energy storage. Of course, the solar radiation if the solar radiation is there, then only the output would be there. But more or less, if we use this technology, we'd be getting 20% more energy, and also the output energy would be very close to a battery storage output. So we are exploring that so that we can put in more RE, even though the RE has to be oversized for that. We would have to oversize RE, the solar and the wind, maybe 2 times or 3 times in order to meet the 85% requirement. But that will make sense today because the cost of lithium-ion battery is a little on the higher side. So it will make sense to explore new technologies in solar and wind to maximize your output from RE, as was also mentioned by Mr. Pratik, that people are seeing that we should have more RE compared to thermal or fossil fuel based power. So that is there. That is another aspect, and I believe that industry is also geared up for this. And in the future, these kind of tenders and a variation of these tenders, that either we can use hydro or we can use tomorrow, as I mentioned, we might be using hydrogen as a storage. Few years down the line, we might be able to use them. So these kind of tenders would be there for the industry. As plain vanilla tenders, plain solar and wind tenders, we would see a little decline in them. And these kind of, let's say, a pure battery tender or a RTC tender, they'll be on the rise. And it is imperative that we have to look out for these tenders if India needs to become a leader in RE deployment and fulfill the pledges which we have made in the international domain of carbon neutrality or net zero.
Thank you, Srinidhi, for sharing your views. Clearly, new technologies are going to change the whole dynamics of the RE sector. So let's hear it from the next panelist on board we have is Mr. Lakshmi Narayanan from Ayana. Lakshmi, are you there?
Yeah, hi. Thank you, JNK, for giving this opportunity to speak in this forum. So I think, I would say that, this RTC kind of tenders are really a good marriage. I mean, first of all, let's pardon me, I'm just outside, so you may hear a lot of background noises. I'll just, just bear for that. See, this RTC kind of tenders are really a good marriage between, thermal and renewables. One on point one is, of course, you are unlocking the ideal thermal assets or the untied capacity, which is, which is one good thing that you are trying to unlock the value. Second is, of course, you are improving the RE deployment. Third is, you are trying to, with a blend, you are trying to at least achieve a certain level or a degree of, predictable nature of the bundled power. So that's the key, I would say, three critical aspects wherein I think the way forward is definitely going to be RTC tenders, whether it's with thermal, hydro, or probably storage may look a little remote given the current prices where they are in, and with the commodity price increase and stuff, probably the downward trajectory is not as expected as it would be. So bearing that in mind, I think these flavors of tenders are really must in India. One is, of course, the expectations of discoms when it comes to, power supplies, that they want more and more of predictability and an assured generation or assured, schedule. So I think that certainly through pure play, plain vanilla solar or wind is definitely going to be a lot challenging. And we have seen in the past that this has been one of the main reasons when most of the discoms have been shying away from buying renewable assets or renewable energy, right? So I think this kind of a mix would obviously, two things. One, will help them get a very competitive rates from both thermal and renewables, and also give them some kind of an assurance. So now coming to the kind of challenges that we face is, despite we say that, we are bridging the gap for expectations of the discoms, but definitely I think in the recent past, if you have seen all the tariff adoption orders pertaining to the RTC tenders, the expectations of ERCs or the discoms are even more stringent, even beyond what what the developers are entitled to kind of do under the tender documents. So that kinds of creates an uncertainty environment. Even after we are considering or designing the system basis the requirements, the expectations of the discoms are not met, and then probably it. So that's one key. Next is, of course, generally what we are relying on in terms of the RTC tenders is to kind of oversize solar or wind. For example, 1x of installed, contracted capacity would entitle for a 1.3x of wind or a 1.2 or 1.5x of solar. So eventually, we are in need of connectivity more than the contracted capacity. So what happens in those scenarios is that for the additional capacity as per the guidelines, we are entitled to kind of do an land and FC arrangement, which eventually takes time from the time the tender is closed. So, the developers are under the constant threat of losing the connectivity at the desired location despite winning the bids way ahead in time. So I'll have to necessarily acquire the land, do a certain kind of equity infusion into the project before I'm assured of getting the additional connectivity that is, required as per my design criteria. That's, point number two. Point number three is basically, it is required from SECI's perspective. And I think that to some extent, they are also correct in saying that is that, like, for example, it's very critical for somebody like a pure RE player like us, where we are always dependent on for these kind of non-conventional energy sources outside our portfolios. So what happens in that circumstances is that we have to find a partner and engage with them completely before the tender closure, which in lot times makes a lot of commercial and technical difficulties because of obvious reasons that these kind of probably I would say complex contract structures would require several level of negotiation. So and sometimes may not go through as well. So I think there should be some amount of flexibility to the developers in terms of flipping, or probably I would say juggling between the non-conventional sources, which would help pure play RE developers like us to kind of participate in these kind of tenders. That's the broader view I would like to place in terms of RTC tender. Yeah, that's it from my side. Yeah.
Thank you, Lakshmi. Those, I think, are very valid points, and maybe we can get some of the answers from Prateek here. But let's get into the question answer session once we hear it from the last panelist on board with us. Surbhi, from you, we would like to understand, now you have heard from all the developers and the SECI community, but as an industry expert, what are your views on some of the new technologies that can be part of the optimal mix to attain these RTC conditions, and any insights about future of battery energy storage solutions in India?
Sure, thanks, Jyoti, and it's a pleasure to be here. I think on the way forward, before I go into the new technologies, just a couple of comments on what has been happening in the RTC space. We know that the sort of locations which are optimal for RTC tenders, mainly hybrid, where solar and wind are together, are limited, right? So you're soon going to run out of them. And there's a lot of oversizing happening. The oversizing, as you mentioned in your report, is around 2x to 3x, right? What is happening is when that kind of oversizing happens, there is a requirement for the excess capacity to be stored somewhere. And we've seen, at least in the couple of tenders that have happened already, and the expectations are the amount of battery storage, or even any kind of storage for that matter, that is going to be a part of these tenders is relatively small, mainly because of the commercial angle of it. We know that pumped hydro makes a lot of sense, but we know, again, there are limitations on how much pumped hydro we can have, the kind of locations that are suitable for it as well. And hence then come in play the new technologies, because it's only different kinds of storage. And we keep hearing battery storage mainly because lithium ion has gotten the ball rolling, not because of stationary storage, but because of EVs. And they achieved that scale, which actually made them the most mature technology within the battery energy storage space. But I don't think lithium-ion batteries are going to be very suitable for the grid scale installations and the RTC tenders that we're talking about. There is a lot happening on the technology space. There are a number of new technologies that are coming in, including flow batteries, because you require longer duration storage to ensure that they do justice to the balancing that is needed for these grid scale installations. So you have the flow batteries which are coming in, and there are a number of combinations that are happening: zinc bromide, vanadium, iron. There are fuel cells that are coming in. So I think it is going to be, and there are different stages of maturity right now. There are pros and cons with each of those. But of course, the main hurdle is the commercial bit. And I think the commercial angle will only get solved. It's not only about them achieving scale, which is important, because only when they can achieve scale can they actually reduce costs. But it's also about having the right market. So the commercials are also affected. There needs to be an integration in the systems level. When you know that there are only, in my opinion, there are only two things that can help here. One is the new technologies that are going to come in, the storage technologies that I'm talking about. And the other is a well-connected network. So in a case where you have oversizing and you have excess power coming in, you have to have very well-connected and transmission networks, and also availability of data. So real-time data, you should have information on where that power can go in at that point in time. So it's all automated. But that's one space where I think interventions need to go in from the government side as well. In terms of technology, this will happen. The technologies would develop, one, as they reach scale, and two, as and when they see that there are revenue streams available for those technologies to be used. So when the ancillary services market, I mean, we've been hearing about, we also have a draft ancillary services paper that has been there for quite some time now. But really the action, when we see action in those areas, is when we will see the technologies helping us to a great extent in making renewables more firm.
Thank you, Surbhi, for sharing your views. Maybe Prateek, if you can answer some bit of the concerns that raised by our developers here, and what Surbhi has just talked about, the new kind of technologies that can play a significant role in driving this transition. Prateek, any comments?
See, the concerns of Mr. Lakshminarayan are not new for us. So my question to him is, why didn't he participate in the RTC tender? But again, that's a different topic. But yeah, what Ms. Surbhi has pointed out, I would like to address that, because because that's pretty important in our planning. As rightly pointed out, lithium-ion may seem as a front runner, but it's not for the long run. As far as large-scale storage is concerned, we keep on having interactions with a lot of storage technology providers, flow batteries. We did have a session, I think day before yesterday, with an Israeli company. They have developed something called air battery. You might have, I don't know whether you might have heard about it. It was new for me personally. I'm not exactly in the technical department. So these all developments are heartening for us. The point is, the definition of storage is something which is in a transition mode. Currently, as I had said earlier, we are focusing on battery. If these technologies fit in that definition, they are most welcome to participate. The challenge is to meet the PR performance requirement as within the timelines and the space constraints which are there. So we are looking at some options to accommodate these kind of requests. One of them is to allow them to set up project outside this designated space if required. So that is something which we are deliberating. And then we are also relooking the minimum availability and efficiency requirements. So all of this is in a fluid state. We may not hit the right target in the first tender itself, because from our experience, we know that we keep on making mistakes in the first tender. But yeah, we are very sure of providing a level playing field to all these technologies, and whichever is the best will obviously win in the near future. From the point of from the developer's point of view, again, see, the point is we are bound by certain guidelines. A lot of these guidelines, the provisions make sense. A lot of these, some few of these obviously may not make sense to the developers, but it is something that it's kind of a constant debate between the two extremes, and sometimes they win, sometimes we win, if I can use the term win. There has been a constant discussion regarding, let's say, timelines of commissioning, for example, and based on their requests and all, we have also proposed the changes to the government. ISTS charges, again, as it's a really huge. I was just going to the order. We have received the order from on mail, so the government has already announced it. So these are the incremental gains which we are getting due to the constant efforts of the developers. So as far as SECI is concerned, we constantly encourage suggestions from the developers, and of course we cannot address all of them as of now.
Thanks, Prateek, for sharing your comments. There is one more thing that I want your opinion on, which is, I think, the major concern that everyone has in the past is the delay in signing the PSAs with the DISCOM. So how is SECI addressing that? And with these RTC tenders, is that already been taken care of?
See, the three tenders which we are discussing today, peak power has not got a lot of interest from the DISCOMs, primarily because of the mismatch between the peak hour definition. That was a big gap which we did not realize at that time. So that is something which we are trying to have a discussion with DISCOMs if the developers are okay. I mean, there are different models which we are working on, but to address those peak hour gaps. But yeah, in terms of numbers, it is the one tender which has secured the least interest. RTC 1 and 2, see, 2 we have received a lot of interest from developer DISCOMs because of the tariff, obviously, and because of the power composition. Everything is okay with the RTC 2 tender, just that we don't have enough capacity now to meet the demand. That's a unique irony. Had everything been right, it would have we would probably be signing the PSA by now. So RTC2 is not an issue if we remove the L1 tariff matching concept. Probably if we repeat the same tender, we will get a lot of competition as well as a lot of response from DISCOM. RTC1, we have already signed PSAs for 300 megawatt out of 400, and we are in the final stage of signing the remaining 100 megawatt. It was basically delayed not because of any other factor than COVID, because there is one more factor with respect to RTC1 delays, because it was initially brought as a response to requirements of two specific DISCOMs, NDMC and Dadar Nagar Haveli. Both of these companies, because of some reason or the other, have not been able to sign the PSAs. And that is why we were left basically we were left surprised. And at that time, after awarding the capacity and all, we had to start looking for other buyers. So that was something unexpected, and that's why it's taking some time. Apart from that, if we look at other tenders of SECI, yeah, there are some delays in solar per se. Is mainly because of the biggest quantum of that delay is the manufacturing tender, but that is something which obviously we are not discussing right now. Wind and hybrid, the demand has finally it has gained speed. So it's kind of a cyclic behavior which we are observing from DISCOMs. Right now, wind and hybrid in general, the DISCOMs are quite aggressive about it. And the recent tenders which we have issued in this calendar year, they have been very well received. And we have also received requests from DISCOMs for the upcoming tranches. So that's not an issue. And probably the biggest challenge which Mr. Lakshmi talked about with respect to this thing is adoption of tariff. So that is, again, we have tried to address it. We cannot address it. Obviously, we have tried to highlight this at various levels possible, right up to the minister. And I mean, it's kind of a cooperation required from the center and state governments. And we are trying to, arrive at the middle ground to achieve tariff adoption at the earliest. But nevertheless, we do provide necessary extension to the developers. Of course, it may not suit their timelines, but that is the only thing which we can offer as of now, as far as the delays are concerned.
Thank you, Prateek, for answering that. But I again have a follow-up question.
Yeah.
So before planning a tender, isn't that a possibility that you already sign an agreement with the DISCOM and then issue the tender? I think some of that has been done in some of the earlier tenders, in some Rajasthan tenders. I think that was the case.
Rajasthan is a very unique case, and it's probably one of our best buyers, consumers. So they have a fixed trajectory of purchasing RE in general. So these kind of states which actually honor their RPO, they are good customers for us. Unfortunately, a lot of DISCOMs, they don't arrive at the final yes or no without seeing the tariff. So when I say when we talk about issuing tenders, it's not that we issue the tenders without any and I mean as a blind shot. We don't do that. We do have some sort of a tentative quantity requirement across India in general. We keep on getting that data on a monthly basis. The only thing is they don't firm up that data unless we provide them a tariff. So the point is that as SECI, we have two roles to play. One is to further the government agenda of installation of capacity. That cannot be done without tendering as of now. We may look at other opportunities in the future. And the other arm of SECI is basically looking at selling that capacity. So on a side note, as I'm in the contracts department, so we keep on getting that heat from the trading department that you keep on issuing new tenders without consulting us and without even bothering to ask us whether the previous tranche was sold or not. So that's a constant flux which we are in, and we keep on balancing the two extremes. But yeah, each time it's not possible, especially for those standard tenders, it's not possible to keep on plain vanilla, as we call them. It's not possible to wait for a firm confirmation. But for the innovative or specific, customized tenders, we keep on trying to first firm up the buyers. Again, that's not been possible for all tenders, but we have for right now what we're trying is firming up the buyer segment before we conclude the tenders for innovative tender. Like for example, the BESS also we have already started market scanning. We probably are in touch with a few of the DISCOMs. If something materializes, we are more than happy to mention that in our tender, because that has resulted in quite a competitive response. But we're not so lucky each time.
Sure, Prateek. I think there are so many questions only for SECI on the panel today. But there are a few questions from the attendees is whether there are some RTC tenders for green hydrogen or offshore wind along with green hydrogen, any of these new kind of combinations that has been explored by SECI?
Green hydrogen, we have not firmed up, we have not zeroed in rather on the exact business model, what will be playing, which role SECI will be playing exactly. So we actually have a meeting on 24th and 25th. I think there's a seminar organized at CBIP. So we are also part of that. So that is something which is being discussed by the management, and we are yet to arrive at the exact role which will be playing. But offshore wind, yeah, of course, we'll be the tendering agency that has already been finalized. Offshore wind, the government is actually moving quite well on that front. Again, that will take a lot of time if I divulge. But briefly, I would just like to say that the two areas, Tamil Nadu and Gujarat, have been finalized. There are NIWAs doing basically all the groundwork with respect to resource assessment and plot allocation and on the whatever the rules are required. MNRE is probably in the process of finalizing the proposal for VGF requirement. Without VGF, this tender will not take off. That is very clear. So we have drafted of initial first draft, but obviously it will have to be redrafted based on the final contours. And we are waiting for the green signal from the MNRE to go ahead with the document. It looks likely that the VGF proposal may get approved by the Ministry of Finance. But again, that's something beyond our imagination. How will the things pan out? But yeah, things are looking better. Probably, if I would have to say, it's better than where we were last year at this time. So things are better for offshore right now.
Thank you, Prateek, for answering patiently so many questions. And I think we are also up for our time for the session today. So I will just like to conclude. I think most of our questions are being answered now that are being posed. So thank you everyone to be part of this session today. The recording of the session will be available on our website shortly. Thank you to all the wonderful panelists for sharing such enriching insights and details that the developers and the SECI is planning way ahead. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Thank you.